You are listening to the Practicing the Art of Small Business podcast with Shannon Merlot and Julie Parker. Join their conversation about business, leadership, and the self-awareness journey to greater success.
Welcome, Julie and listeners, to Practicing the Art of Small Business. We are up to episode number 22. What's the thing? Chickens 22, legs 22?
That's legs 11. I'm not quite sure what 22 is. Maybe two lots of legs 11.
Two ducks in a row? Who knows? Anyway, welcome, Julie, to episode 22.
Oh, thank you so much. I'm sorry it's been a little while since you've had a chance to play your bingo, obviously. You've forgotten all the terms during COVID lockdowns. How have you been, Shannon?
Oh, look, Julie, I've been on the up and down journey of business. And I thought, as we always do, not that I want to get on the therapy couch, but I thought that we could talk about how do we build resilience after taking the knocks? Because I'm guessing that this is something that I know I've experienced with clients myself, and I've experienced myself. So what do you think we do episode 22 about resilience? What it is and how do we get it?
I think this is a winner of a topic, Shannon, because our level of resilience and how we take on the knocks of business and entrepreneurship, that definitely equates to how enjoyable or traumatic we find the journey.
And how quickly we can come back from those knocks, because there's always going to be knocks, but the quicker that we can get back on the horse. I'm going to see how many metaphors and analogies I can bring into today's podcast. So, and to see if I can mix my messages as well. I have been known to throw a spanner amongst the pigeons. So I'm just going to see how many of those I can throw in. Anyone who can count them out.
That's a brutal scene, throwing spanners at pigeons. That's pretty brutal.
So the sooner that we can actually get back on the horse, the better off we're going to be to keep momentum in our businesses. So let's talk about resilience.
That sounds groovy. So what sort of things can kind of be one of those knocks that you're talking about in business? Let's talk about a few things that challenge us and require us to become a bit more resilient to get over them quickly.
Yeah, good question. I think that for a lot of people, the knocks can probably be related to setting goals that maybe don't get achieved or don't get achieved during the timeline that we're hoping for. Mm-hmm. So it might have been something along the lines of maybe like a sales goal, or even just a revenue goal. Or certainly I know that I've had clients who have had deals that haven't gone through, and that's knocked them pretty hard, and we've had to sort of build from those components. For me, I guess in the space that I've been, I suppose it's been a little bit of internal thinking and kind of challenging why, and that's kind of got me a little bit beaten. So I think it's goals. I think it's when our expectations of reality don't meet our expectations of our vision, that can break us down a little bit. What are your thoughts on what you think affects our resilience?
I agree. For me, with my work, not so much the work that I do directly with dental teams, but the online work. So trying to get as many subscribers as possible, people buying into my online courses or the club membership, all those sort of things. And you put out so many emails that have had a whole wealth of hours and time and creativity and thought that goes into the construction of that and the design of that content, that when it goes out, really, to be honest with you, I am surprised when 100 people don't sign up straight away. I'm truly surprised, because I'm like, well, it really all that effort warranted 100 people signing up. And so I've been doing that kind of work for 9 years now, and I have built up a strong resilience around it. And it was brought home to me just this past week. I was talking to another consultant who is getting into that space, and she was raising concerns that I haven't considered for such a long time, but I certainly considered them at the start of my journey, and it's made me realize how far I've come.
Mm.
But another area of resilience that I needed to develop when I owned my own practice for 10 years, back from 2003 to 2013, was when I started working with other people and trying to get certain results or performances from them. I had certain expectations on them. And when they didn't deliver, I had to take responsibility and recognize that part of it was because of my management of them, or the way I communicated my vision or goals to them. And also when it comes to leadership of those team members too, if they come to you and they say, you're not quite the leader that's going to get the best out of me, that can be quite challenging. So we need to get a bit of resilience also around the way we work and the feedback we get from, either directly or indirectly, the people that we work with.
Yeah. I think the leading of people can actually beat our resilience a little bit. If you're a self-aware leader and you're someone who really questions, Julie, I've got to call out the background noise for our listeners.
Can you hear the bird as well?
Yes, you can.
Listeners and viewers, I moved the bird that we're babysitting, the parrot that we're babysitting, because I was afraid it would screech. But it screeches when it's alone. If it was still back in the office with me, it probably wouldn't be screeching. And the dog that we're also babysitting is now found a cat in the backyard and is barking, and now back inside again. Hello. Had a little bit of shush.
So we do have two special guests for today's episode. We've got the dog and the bird. So I think that when you hear something screeching in the background, or it sounds, when I didn't realize when Julie and I were starting off before we started the recording, I thought that Julie was doing sound effects for our conversation, because there were certain periods where I said something quite shocking, and in the background there was this screech. So hopefully the bird will time it quite well ongoing from now on as well.
That's right. And I just can't close the door, otherwise the dog can't walk around, and so it will bark on the other side of the door. Oh my goodness me. For somebody that doesn't have children, I'm finding everything quite a distraction.
You've got a menagerie.
That's right.
So yes, going back to the leadership side of things, I do think that if you are a self-aware leader and you're someone who does question yourself quite a lot, that can actually be a real challenge of, how do I get the best out of them? And when you're not, depending on how you address that level of thinking, it can actually beat you down a little bit, I think. Yeah. And I'm using the term beat you down because I think that when you're not feeling resilient, it does feel like the universe can kind of kick you in the kidneys a little bit while you're lying in the fetal position. You're a little bit like,
not again.
Just another one.
And so when we are struggling in that space, of course, resilience in entrepreneurship or small business, managing people, managing ourselves, is the same as resilience in little children as they grow up through through primary school, and they've got another child teasing them. The only way we develop resilience is by doing it ourselves. Nobody else can swing in and fix us for us. This is one of those areas. It is self-growth, isn't it?
It is. I do agree with you, Julie. I do agree that it is the work that we need to do in order to become resilient. But perhaps what we can do is really look at what some of the research says that can support resilience and what we can do to support ourselves. And if anyone who's listening to this is looking at building their resilience, what are some of the tools that they can take from our toolkit to help them build resilience on a daily basis?
That's a super idea. That would provide people with solutions, which is what the purpose of the podcast is.
I mean, otherwise we'd just say, here's the problem.
So otherwise it's called the Whingy Whiny. Otherwise it's called the Whingy Whiny podcast.
So
practicing the art of small business, not suffering the result of small business.
But if anyone would like us to have an offshoot podcast called the Whingy Whiny, maybe we could do that later in the afternoons, and we could do it with wine. The Whingy Whiny.
It's the whiny. I love it. We'll whinge while we whine. That's the best idea you've ever had.
Oh, now I'm feeling resilient.
So what are some of the things that you have used in your world, Shannon, to help build up your resilience?
Well, when we were doing some research, and quite often we just jump on and do our podcast by the fly, but I wanted to see what others were saying about how to build resilience. And it was actually validating to read through what others recommended, because then I could say, well, this is what I have done. So some ideas around how to build resilience. So one psychologist, and I will tell you their name because it was their comment, psychologist Susan Kobasa, Kobasa, said that there were 3 essential elements for building resilience, and that was challenge, commitment, and personal control. And
challenge, commitment, personal control. Yes, you'll have to extrapolate on each one of those for me.
That was my plan, and I was gonna put it into Shannon speak.
Good.
So she suggested that looking at failures as challenges, and for me, what came to mind as I was reading that was it's about reframing what the problem is. And when we reframe, it's an opportunity for us to look at it differently. And I am actually, one of my values is about being driven by challenge. I like new things. I like variety. I like solving problems. So my opportunity has always been to reframe the experience and to look at it as a challenge that I can grow and overcome from. So that's one way that I definitely do use that reframing. But I think that there's obviously the psychologist knows her psychology stuff. But I would agree that saying that these are lessons that we can learn on our journey is actually a great way of being able to look at the challenges as a challenge and not as a failure.
Yeah, because the meaning we attach to things, or therefore the way we frame things, either it makes the situation, the thing, either helpful in our world or unhelpful in our world.
Yeah, absolutely. So going on to the commitment. So she was sort of saying that resilient people are committed to their goals. They have a commitment and they follow on with that commitment. Now, for me, commitment is a word that perhaps I've got commitment issues. Let's not, again, this is not Shannon's therapy couch, but commitment for me and committed for me isn't a word that resonates for me. It actually feels constrictive for me. However, I like the idea of not giving up. And I think that's what resilience is. It's actually about sort of saying that there's more out there. You've got to get back on the horse, stay committed to what you're going to do and keep going. And so much as I say that I avoid commitment, I do, begrudgingly every now and again kind of pick myself back up and go, okay, well, if I'm getting out of bed today, I might as well try and do a better job than what I did the day before if it wasn't a great day. So I think for me, that's where I've kind of shown that commitment or stayed committed to my goals. And some other strategies that we found in the research was that actually resetting your goals can really help in building resilience. So if the goal hasn't been achieved, really looking back at the goal and breaking it down and kind of resetting it can actually help you build back resilience. And making
so that's like re-establishing the expectation, reviewing the expectation, adjusting the expectation that you've got over that thing.
Yeah, absolutely. I think also, I don't know about you, Julie, do you find that you set are you one of these people who sets big goals that don't necessarily get achieved and then lose motivation?
Yeah, probably my whole life, yeah. You watch one motivational talk and all of a sudden you're making 10-year goals out. You think, oh my goodness me, anything can happen by then. So let me just really pump it up. But then you tend to still have in your brain, over the next coming months, I'd rather, I need to be able to achieve this to maintain a certain amount of viability. Yeah.
And I think that's where being able to break those goals into things that are really achievable and super tangible, so you can build the, what's the word, Julie, where you're kind of giving yourself the evidence that you can succeed. There's a word for it. This is where I should have that commitment to actually the analogies I was going to say. But you're essentially wanting to make sure that you're achieving things so that it's telling your brain that you can actually achieve things, which helps to build that resilience as you go. So the psychologist, Susan Kobasa, then talks about personal control. And for me, that's about that locus of control. So the locus of control is really about what we have control over in our lives. What is it that I can do, and not relying on others to build my resilience? So what can I do to build my resilience, and staying focused on what you can do and be in order to give you that reason to keep going. I guess the idea around personal control is that if we're spending time worrying about things that we actually can't have an impact on at all, such as a third person's behavior, then we're wasting our energy, and we are going to feel like we're not able to affect change, which then undermines our sense of self and our resilience from that. So the idea of staying within what I can control actually helps us to build resilience. What are your thoughts on where you've maybe learned a lesson in that area, Julie?
I heard something years ago, over a decade ago, and it's always stuck with me, that the world is in chaos. That's its natural state, is chaos, and it's up to us to put order to it. And so that's always been a thought that I've had in my brain. So when things do seem chaotic, out of my control, I think, yeah, that's the way things are supposed to be. It was never supposed to be all going down the path that I want it to go down. Its natural space is chaotic. And so I'm going to start putting order to the things that I do have control over, that I do have responsibility over. And we've spoken before in the past about free will. So when I'm talking about the actions of another person, then it's never going to be in a situation where I've got complete control over another person. What the natural order is that they are their beautiful, chaotic self, and it's up to me to try to tap into a way to have them be helpful in the pursuit of my goals if they're working for me and my business, and that the next step is they're going to be helpful in that next step. But for myself, I think I am a resilient person. I think it is a skill that I have absolutely learned over time. We can all remember times where it became quite traumatizing when we were suffering the journey of becoming resilient. And the thoughts that go through my mind on a very regular, if not daily basis, are things like, everything happens for a reason. Everything will be okay in the end. This is how I get better, by facing issues. I'm not going to get better when everything's calm and in my control all the time. This is how I get better. And so I think when you have this repeated belief that everything is a wonderful, as you said, there are no failures. It's all an opportunity to get better. I think that in itself helps us get to a point of resilience quicker, because we are embracing our discomfort in the moment, because it's our journey to something greater.
Yeah.
I have come back to the thought of one of the things that my tremendous husband, Charles Kobasa, talks about, one of his wise lessons, is that our reward for solving problems is what? And he asks his audience this question: what are the rewards for solving problems? And some people say, oh, you feel good about the fact that you've solved something. You don't have to worry about that thing anymore. You become more successful. And then Charles says, indeed, what your reward for solving problems is bigger problems. That it is life's journey of improving and evolving to become better and better at what we do, so we can become better and better problem solvers, so we actually attract into our world bigger and bigger problems. And he uses examples such as, a prime minister on the journey to becoming a prime minister. Before the vote, what the biggest problem was that they got the vote, that they won and they became prime minister. But then do you think the problems got smaller after he became prime minister? No, they got wildly bigger. And a school child going through university, going through HSC, I think I've dated myself. I think it's VCE now. Going through VCE, their biggest problem is getting through those exams at the end of the year and getting into the course at the university that they want to get into. Once they get into that university, do their problems become smaller as a reward? No, wildly bigger. And so maybe that is helpful as well, that these things, these knocks to our self-confidence, these knocks to us that make us feel like we're not all that resilient, that we frame that as, oh, magnificent, because I deserve this big, juicy problem because I'm so competent.
Yeah. And actually, it's interesting you say that. We weren't talking about this. I wasn't talking about this with the client that I'm going to refer to. We weren't talking about resilience, but I was talking to them and I came up again with a bit of an analogy.
Love the analogy.
I sort of said to them, what if life is like a video game? And this is old school video games. And I did do a post on LinkedIn with this. I'm talking old school video games like Mario Brothers or Sonic the Hedgehog. This is where you couldn't save where you were at. So you had to actually play the game from start to finish. And you only ever had 3 lives. And each level gets harder and harder. And at the end of the level, there's like a challenge that you need to overcome in order to get to the next level. And then when you get to the next level, the bad guys are a little bit more harder to kill, and there's more challenges, and the jumps you've got to go wider, and there's more bad guys to kill, and all the rest of it. And that does feel a bit like the journey of life, that you've actually got to learn the lessons in this level, overcome the bad guy, and then get to the next level. But the next level isn't any easier. And what happens is each time, not in business you die, but each time you die, you go back to the start. But you actually then get through the levels quicker. So quite often in that journey, when I sort of thought about this, I actually felt a little bit more resilient, because I was like, it's not a game, but this is just new levels. And when I get there, it doesn't feel any better because I've actually just got more bad guys to kill. And again, this is an analogy. I haven't killed anyone, and there are no bad guys.
That is a tremendous analogy. I applaud you for that analogy. That is very, very good. And if you've done a post on it on LinkedIn, I'm going to find it. I'm going to send it out as a blog, a guest blog, if that's okay, to my community, because that is really fantastic. And you're right, because you don't resist that process. You go, well, I'll just have to get better for the next time. I'll have to modify the next time. And if we had that approach to life, the resistance about it would go. The disappointment would still be felt. The journey would still be moved through, but we're not resisting the process. Nice. I like it. I like it.
You're welcome to use that. Can we talk about another psychologist that I quite like this one, and he's got a couple of points that I think are really relevant for resilience as well. Can we talk about him?
We can.
So this is from Martin Seligman, and he's got a number of books, and he's a pretty smart guy out there. So one of the things that he mentions about building resilience is about the realization of permanence. And for me, I like to flip that it's impermanent, that everything is impermanent, and that we can build resilience by reminding ourselves that idea of this too shall pass. And you mentioned it, that it will be okay. There is going to be challenge. It is going to happen. And things are not always going to be rosy, but it's impermanent. There's always going to be shifts. And I think knowing that it's not an end, but knowing that there's going to be a point where the level gets easy, because we learned that lesson and we've jumped that 3 times, that feels nice to me. What's your
Nice.
thoughts about permanence or impermanence?
Well, just what you said at the end there, that there is a purpose to it all. It's not just difficult for difficult's sake. It's not just traumatic just to make life difficult for ourselves. It has a purpose. And the purpose is that we can only progress through life if we get better, and we can only get better when we are challenged. So it's one of the challenges that makes us a human being, that I'm better now than I was 10 years ago. Thank God. I also want to be wildly better in another 10 years' time. You know, when I'm 30, I want to be,
Yes, it's good. Life's going to be fun when we get to 30, isn't it, Julie?
That's right. That's right. I'm looking forward to it, I've got to say.
For those who don't know, please go to our YouTube channel. And if Julie and I look like we're in our 30s, please make a comment and you will become our new bestest friends very, very quickly.
Make a comment or make an appointment with the optician. But I want to be better in 10 years' time. And so if I want to be better in 10 years' time, I must be willing to embrace the journey that's going to get me there, and the challenges that I'm going to face that I can then overcome, and the problems that I'm going to overcome, so I can get bigger and bigger problems. So by the time 10 years rolls around, everyone is falling at their feet asking me for advice and wisdom.
I love your optimism, Julie. Having come out of a period of not feeling very resilient, I think sometimes it can be challenging to feel that sense of like, woohoo, next level, I'm gonna go. When you literally feel like you're in the fetal position getting kicked in the kidneys by the universe. One of the strategies is that Martin Seligman mentions is about having empathy and compassion. Or actually not him, sorry. A lot of people in the research were saying having empathy and compassion and being able to nurture ourselves. And I think that that's actually really important. I actually think that sometimes when we've taken the hits, being able to take our foot off the accelerator and slow it down, give ourselves a little bit of self-care and a little bit of that internal hug, that kind of, it's going to be okay. It's actually also okay to be a little bit sort of melancholy, but have empathy to ourselves and compassion for the journey that we've been on and that we've taken those hits, so that your brain has the opportunity to calm down and give you the strength to then keep going to take the next step. And when I say the brain, it's because we also need to think about what's happening on a biological level, that when we're taking those hits, our brain is getting the message that we're at risk, that on some level our survivability is being threatened, and our brain is going to start doing unconscious things to tell us that it's not okay, and that the bad guys, so if we think about that, the video game, the bad guys are going to get us, and our brain is going to do things like the flight, fight, freeze response in order to try and keep us safe. And the way to combat that is to give ourselves a little bit of time to go back, allow our brain to kind of go into that parasympathetic calm mode, give ourselves that time to be empathetic to the journey that we've been on and have compassion, so that we can then go and then fight the next bad guy. And guys, if you're not watching, I'm putting bad guys in the talking marks because the challenge is the bad guys, going with the video game analogy. So that's one of the things. What are your thoughts about empathy and compassion for yourself?
Yeah, I agree. The thought that came up for me when you were talking about that is we do need to make a conscious effort to tell ourselves how we should be feeling about this thing, because our negative self-talk is extreme. More often than not, it is more damaging than it is helpful. And so we do need to bring a bit of order to it and say, I'm going to allow myself to acknowledge that I need to improve in that area. I'm going to find the opportunity for learning in that area, but I'm not going to go down the path. I'm not going to allow that path to take me down. You're incompetent. You're useless. After all, what are you doing here? So we do have to be very aware of that self-talk and making it appropriate to fit the situation. And the thing that may help with that is when we are in that fight, fright, freeze response, what we want that next thing to do. If you're going back to your analogy about the Mario Brothers, in my brain it's Space Invaders, because that's how old I am. Gattaca, it's not fight, fright, or freeze response. It's no good just to stand there and wait for the thing to attack you, because it will attack you. That's its purpose, to attack you so you get better. What you want to do is just find the next helpful thing, or how do I make this situation get something useful from it? So if it's an interaction with somebody that went bad and they've vented out on you and you've, really feel like you've been a bit wounded from that, then do that little journey of, okay, I'm going to write down the event that happened. I'm then going to write down what my response was, and then I'm going to note down what the result of the situation was. Now, if that event happened to me again, what would be the result I actually wanted from that? And then reverse engineer what your response needs to be should that ever happen again in the future. And then make a promise to yourself, okay, next time that happens, someone attacks me for a thing, I want the result to be such. And so I've identified what the helpful response would be that would be more likely to get me to a more positive result. And then we can look at the event that happened, the damaging event that happened, and we can go, okay, now it's useful in my world. I've constructed it so it's a useful thing that's happened in my world. Now I can let it go.
I think what you're talking about moves perfectly into one of the other ideas around building resilience, and this is from Martin Seligman. He talks about the pervasiveness. My mouth is working, and it sort of says that resilient people don't let setbacks or bad events affect other unrelated areas of their lives. And what I think about that is that kind of keeping it real and not catastrophizing. So one of the things that can happen for this is definitely not me, because it actually drives me a little bit crazy when I hear people say this, where something goes wrong and then everything is bad. Like, I definitely don't do this, which is I've had this bad thing happen and therefore I'm a failure, and I'm a failure at everything, and I'm not good at this and that, and I might as well just go dig a hole. That actually doesn't help any of us be more resilient. So, and you sort of talked about that, and I extrapolated from that catastrophizing, that kind of putting it all in a bucket of, if we can take a learning from it, not make it bigger than what it actually is, and actually start to move forward, then that then helps us to be more resilient than to stay stuck with where we're at the moment.
Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. Now, one of the first things that you looked at online when we first started this session, I found it such an intriguing response to things that batter our confidence around. Can you mention that about the responsibility, whose responsibility it was for things to go bad?
Yeah, this was really, really good, and so good for me. I often bang on about how we have to take responsibility for ourselves. And it's Grant Cardone has a story, and a lot of people get shocked about this. He says that you are 100% responsible for every single thing that happens for you. This goes back to that locus of control point. He says that if you get rear-ended in a car accident, it is your fault, because you left the house at a certain time, you decided to be on that particular road, you didn't leave enough braking room, you put yourself in that situation, blah, blah, blah. And I really buy into that. So I'm in that 100% responsibility side of things. But what I loved, thank you very much, Martin Seligman, what I love about that is personalization. He says that people who have resilience don't blame themselves when bad things or bad events happen. They actually sometimes see other people as the cause. And that actually was really, there was something really powerful about going, okay, I can analyze this and I can certainly take responsibility for what I'm responsible for. But you know what? Being able to say that person just did a really bad job and that thing didn't align with how I want to see how I see the world, and that was actually them. It was so helpful, Julie.
it's such a relief, isn't it, at times to be able to go, not my problem, theirs. Now I can powerfully move off and continue on with my day.
Yeah, because I am a ruminator. Hi, my name is Shannon. I'm a ruminator. We're also starting a support group for Ruminators Anonymous. That would actually be really fun. But I am a ruminator, and what that means is I do spend an inordinate amount of time analyzing and going over problems and really getting a little bit stuck in that. So almost giving myself permission to say, you know what, it's not me, it's you, is really, really so relieving. And so
freeing. Yeah,
it's very, very freeing. So that's thank you for reminding me to bring that one up. And the final thing that I want to mention, because I think that you can talk quite heavily about this, is about having optimism for the future, because you are Lady Optimism of the Future. That is now your title, by the way.
Lady Optimism for the Future. Well, I've got to say, I don't know when this started. Many years ago this started, where and I don't want to offend anybody. I'm not in the offense industry, as you know, but I truly don't want to have people think, oh, that's a bit distasteful. But this is where my mind goes. That I am God's favorite. I am one of God's favorites. And I can say that with complete confidence, because look at all the evidence in my life that everything is glorious. And so for a start, you go broad. So I'm in this wonderful country that I can work, and I've got all 4 working limbs, my brain works, all those usual things. But then when it comes down to every day, I love the house I live in. I get to babysit this wonderful dog. I get to speak to Shannon today, and thankful for all those sort of things. But then the gratitude around all of the things around our world, I believe is where the optimism stems from. I'm focused so heavily on the benefits of living this life that I enjoy the drawbacks, because for a start, I know that, you cannot have any life without both benefits and drawbacks. And I do believe that it's what you focus on, the benefits of the drawbacks, which is going to be your experience of life. And when you really pump up your gratitude around what's going on around you, nothing that bad ever really happens. And I know that people dying, and there are absolute tragedies that will come up in my life and have been in my life in the past as well. But focusing but all of the general stuff that happens in our world, throwing so much gratitude on the benefits of our world, I think that is where that optimism stems from. And so whenever something good does happen, even if it's when the light turns green, when I'm in a rush, even if it's when I get a car space where it's supposed to be, where I've got a difficult conversation to have, I have it and it actually turns out okay, I do that mental thing of more evidence that I'm one of your favorites, God. Thank you so much. Wow. I don't want to go all Christian on you, on your ass.
Actually, that's thank you for sharing that. That is such a tangible way, because I think when we say I'll be grateful for what you've got, you've really just given such a tangible way for understanding how to practice gratitude in the moment. And I do kind of love it how you've kind of put it to the idea of the universe is like, well, the universe has got my back. Like, thanks universe, or thanks God, or whatever, thanks spirits, thanks whatever it is, whatever physics, whatever, whatever you want to put it around. Well, I think that's been, I'm certainly feeling a little bit more resilient today, Julie. What are your thoughts about resilience after our podcast today?
Yeah, I think it's just embracing that journey. And one of the things we did mention earlier on was the more we can boost our own self-confidence, the better. So do whatever study and research you need to go into to understand how you can construct a higher level of self-confidence in your world. But you mentioned earlier as well around evidence. When we're living our life, when we're growing through that journey day to day, we don't always get to see from a perspective where we go, that's where we were then and that's what we are now. And certainly when I had this other consultant chat with me about the resilience around marketing marketing and promotions, that highlighted to me how far I've come. But this is a time where do start writing things down in a diary or a journal so you can see more clearly. You can read back, how did I feel a year ago about certain things? So you can clearly see, yes, I am progressing. Yes, I'm becoming more resilient because the things that concern me now are different to the things that used to concern me. So start writing down all of your wins, all the things that were difficult that you bounced back from or got lessons from, gained wisdom from. And so you can start reading through these things when you feel like your confidence has had a hit and remind yourself, see, you are better than what you think you are.
Great points. Great points. So just in wrapping up, I normally like to do a little bit of a wrap. Wiki. I went there.
You did go there.
There's opportunities to reframe the experience into the challenge, that the challenge is part of life, and kind of looking at that from a positive aspect. Stay committed to your goals because that can help you to stay the course when you've received the knocks. Sometimes if the goal is too big, it's important to break it down so that you're building the evidence that you've got. Julie suggested a great point about writing down where you've been or where as you go on the journey so you can look back. Focus on what you can control and then absolutely let go of what you can't control or what could actually be blamed on other people, especially if you're a ruminator like me, hands up. The idea of impermanence, that it's not going to last forever. Don't catastrophize. This is not the end of the world, no matter what. There are people who have lost millions and millions and millions of dollars, and they have risen, the phoenix, they've risen from the ashes, and have a positive image or optimism around the future. I love Julie's little comment that God's got her back. She's the favorite. She's a favorite golden child. And for that reason, she always gets the wins and has deep gratitude for that. And finally, give yourself some time to nurture and have empathy and compassion for yourself when you are on the ground getting kicked by the universe, because you're not the golden child.
Everyone else, you poor things. That was a great wrap up there, Shannon. Thank you so very much. A reminder to everybody, please subscribe to this podcast or YouTube channel. If you're enjoying it, share it with your friends and family and networks if you find it has value in your life and it might have value in theirs. And if you can, give us a 5-star review if you've been enjoying it. That would be also very awesome. Shannon, thank you. I look forward to seeing you again very soon.
Likewise, Julie. Thanks, listeners. Take care.